YouTube channel near you.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Spiritual Street Talk with Alethea Jacob. I'm Alethea, and I am delighted that you are taking the time to tune into this episode, and I hope that it will bring you some comfort, some guidance, some insight, or maybe just some thought-provoking ideas to ponder over the next few days, weeks, months, whatever, however they serve you. So for those of you who are new to the show, what I typically do is the first few minutes, I just kind of talk about what's been on my mind and heart, and share any interesting stories about things that have happened during the week. And then what I do is I will present messages from Spirit. I have chosen some oracle cards, angel cards, tarot cards for tonight, and I'll read through and give those messages out. And very often what'll happen is whether you're watching it live tonight or whether you are tuning in tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, when you hear those messages, they're going to resonate with you and you'll be like, wow, isn't that crazy? You know, I just tuned into this episode and it felt like those messages were just for you. Well, good news is they are. They are just for you if you're tuning into them and hearing them. If you are live on the chat for the first time, just a little reminder that if there's a question you'd like to ask or a topic that you want me to discuss or just that my opinion about, just write it in the chat, but put it in all caps, please, because a lot of times there's different regulars that pop on and they're talking to each other in the chat and whatnot. But if it's a question that's for me, I'll know that because it'll be in all capital letters. So thank you for that. Okay, then let me just swing back around to the format. So after I've shared the messages from Spirit, then I will open up the chat and take those questions or comments and use those as a springboard for the rest of the show. My intention with this show is that it's your show. This is a place where you can be safe to ask pretty much any question. There's no topic that I consider taboo. If it's important enough for you to ask within reason, I will answer it if I'm able to. And then as far as the intention, it's also to hopefully maybe give you some food for thought or plant some seeds for the future. I look at metaphysical and spiritual things very, very differently than most people that are in this field, because I also spent over 18 years working for a Fortune 500 company as a senior management consultant. I worked as a chemist for a while. I worked for Guiding Eyes for the Blind at their Canine Development Center. I ran a couple of businesses, dog training businesses and other types of businesses. And one actually had 19 employees. So I'm very aware of what it takes to operate in and be successful in the worldly stuff. But part of what made me successful was being aware of the spiritual world, that we are more than our physical body, that there is more to us than just this, right? And all the things that are around us. We do have a spirit. We have a soul. We have a purpose for why we were born in this lifetime, here and now. You know, what were we meant to do? We have soul groups that often incarnate with us. And those are those people that we meet that we're like, God, I know you, I like you, I trust you. And I barely made contact, and yet I feel like you're somebody that I'm connected to. And that's because on a spiritual or soul level, we all said, hey, let's all kind of be born more or less around the same time. We'll come on down. And when the time is right, we'll find each other. And when we find each other, it's usually to do some good work, to be a service to others, to help each other, whatever way it goes. So my intention here is to kind of help make some of the spiritual and metaphysical type topics much more accessible and usable in everyday life. For example, the whole topic of intuition. A lot of people tease about it, and you're like, well, wait a minute. The best business people I knew had tremendous intuition. They had that gut feeling. They knew instinctively, it seemed, who to invite onto projects, when red flags were coming up, what to do to fix problems before they even became problems, right? So we use our intuition in business all the time. We use our intuition when it comes to becoming friends with somebody. We kind of get a sense of, is this somebody that's good or for me or not so good for me, right? A lot of us ignore our intuition, guilty, when it comes to boyfriends or spouses or mates sometimes. And you're like, you're hearing all the bells going off and the red flags flying. And you're like, yeah, la, 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 la. And that poor intuition of yours is going, really, really? I tried to tell you. And we ignored them. But the reason we have an intuition, guys, is because it's literally in our DNA. We are the descendants of the people back from caveman times, prehistoric times, the people that had the intuition to know this cave is safe. This cave has the saber-toothed tiger in it. Stay away. They were the ones who survived. And the survivors bred and had more intuitive people born to them, who then also knew which of the poisonous foods to eat and which of the poisonous foods to avoid, right? They had the intuition to know what was safe and what wasn't. So that has come down to generation after generation after generation. And I'm sure, a lot of times people are like, oh, I just had this feeling, or the phone rang and I knew who it was. Or, oh, I've been thinking about my friend Sally all day. And then Sally calls at night and it just blew me away. Well, why do you think you were thinking about her all day? You were on her mind as well. And she was intending on calling you, right? So we have this connection, this non-physical telepathic connection with anybody who's important in our life, and sometimes even with strangers, right? We just have a knowing, and it's like, I don't know how I know what I know. And the process and the why of it is not as important as it is to understand that you have those gifts. We all have spiritual gifts, and we all know people that have them. And to me, developing a spiritual gift is a choice, just like developing any other perceived human potential gift is a choice. So do you want to be a linguist and know a lot of languages? Okay, well, you have to study and learn and practice and find environments to really immerse yourself in where that becomes a reality. You want to learn how to play an instrument. Well, it might take you a while to find the ones that suit you best. If you have really small hands, maybe piano isn't the right thing for you, but playing the flute or the piccolo might be, right? If you really love to dance and think, oh, I'd love to take ballroom dance or tap dance or ballet or jazz, and you really want to become an excellent dancer, you can hire a teacher and you can practice and practice, and eventually you'll become good. Now, you may not be good enough to become the prima ballerina at a famous ballet company, but you can still enjoy that gift and share that gift with others by performing, by singing, by dancing, by sharing, by helping to interpret when people are lost if you speak those languages, right? So developing your intuition is no different than any of those, right? If you say, hey, I'd really like to have a better intuition. I'd really like to be able to be more in tune with the guidance that's coming to me from my personal guides and angels and loved ones in spirit. I'd like to be able to perceive those, hear those, see those, and get a sense for what are they trying to guide me and help me do? What do I need to do to become the best possible version of myself that I'm possibly able to do, right? It depends sometimes when you start things in life. If I wanted to become a world-class gymnast, well, guess what? That boat sailed probably about 60 years ago, because I should have started when I was 3 or 4, tumbling on the mats and learning those lessons. And, you see the Olympians that are performing and you're like, oh my God, they're amazing. But they've also been doing it since they practically could walk. They were tumbling and being brought to schools and practicing and training, right? So there's some that you might say, well, I can't be a world-class gymnast, but I can certainly, enjoy watching it. I can get my body in, the best possible shape and condition I can, you know. So there's always room for improvement, and there's always a way to at least explore and have that curiosity about your gifts, those spiritual gifts, the gifts of humanity, the things that are all part of our human potential. That part of the belief I've always had is if one person's able to do it, unless they are exceptionally gifted with certain genetics or something, right? We all should be able to do it to some extent. I remember watching Stuart Wilde, excuse me, years ago, lead a fire walk. And I'm watching dozens and hundreds, probably hundreds at that point, of people take off their shoes, take off their socks, roll up their pant legs, and walk across this bed of hot coals. And I'm like, how is this even possible? My scientific mind was like, no, this can't be, But then I said, well, wait a minute. If they're all able to do it, why can't I do it? And then I learned what the inner process was to kind of get your mind prepared for it, and what are the things you needed to know about it. And off I went, and I did a fire walk years ago. And so for us, we can't be and shouldn't be too quick to accept the limitations in our life when we haven't really given it a fair shake, right? Too many people give up on their dreams before they've even taken one step towards them. And my hopes is that if you're tuning into this channel and you're on this network, you are somebody who is a possibility-minded, oriented person, that you are somebody who is a light worker, who wants to make a difference in the world, who wants to become the best possible version of you that you can become. All right. So what happened this week, right? What's going on? So it's cold out there, and it's cold pretty much everywhere, right? So it's nice to hear the stories of, the people that are opening up their homes, checking on their neighbors. They're sharing their warmth in this cold, right? They're showing compassion and kindness for each other. They're being of service to each other, bringing hot meals, to the seniors that lost their power, and checking in on them and making sure that they're okay, that there's some alternate heat source, or bringing them to warming centers. So, there's a lot of good news stories that are out there. I want to talk about two little things that have happened that are more spiritually oriented for me that happened this week. So one was just earlier tonight, a friend came over, and I kept having a premonition of her dropping a bowl of mine. And I have a really nice china pattern that I love. And so as she's doing different things in the kitchen, I'm like, please be careful, please be careful, please be careful. And sure enough, I went to hand her a bowl, and as she grabs it, it slipped and she dropped it, and it shattered on the floor. And I thought, okay, what the heck is the point of having a premonition if it's going to happen anyway? Well, in this case, it wasn't that it had to happen. I had to take different action. So if I was worried about it, instead of me telling her, be careful, be careful, be careful, I should have taken over the task of doing the dishes. I should have cleaning up after the meal. I should have done that, right? Because then if it fell and it broke, it would have been my fault, not her fault. And I may have prevented it if I was more decisive in taking action, instead of just warning, be careful, be careful, be careful, right? So that was an interesting little learning, because sometimes we get these premonitions and we're like, well, if it's going to happen anyway, no. Part of the reason we're being shown these premonitions is so that we can possibly take action to do something to stop it. But verbalizing, be careful, was not sufficient to stop the action. I should have done something. I should have jumped in if it was that important to me. And, it got me a little upset, more, not the fact the bowl broke or at my friend at all. It was an accident, but at myself. I was pissed. I was like, why didn't I listen more to that? I had that premonition. I even told her I had the premonition. And, that was my bad. Even after all of these years in this field, I still have those oopses, right? We all have oopses. We have to forgive ourselves and move on as best we can. So that was on the sort of like slap on the wrist side, right? And on the positive side, I had a phone call from a woman that I just know at a distance from church. I've never been introduced to her. I don't know her family. I really don't know anything about her. And so she calls me up and said, hey, I'd like to work with you. I'd like to have a session with you. How does it work? And so we're chatting for a while, and I'm helping her with a few different odds and ends as a spiritual life coach. And then I asked her, I said, well, whatever prompted you to call me? And she said that her nonverbal son, who has pretty severe autism, apparently, and I've not met him, pointed me out at a distance at church, and then signed to the mom or wrote something down because he's nonverbal. He doesn't talk. Communicated to the mom that she should work with me, that I was somebody that his angel said I'd be able to help her. And I thought, well, isn't that fun? How often do you have angels talking to a nonverbal kid who then is able to communicate that to the parent? And she has the courage to pick up the phone and say, I don't know exactly what you do, but, my angels have said I'm supposed to work with you. And I was like, yeah, no pressure there, right? But I felt a really strong connection with her. And I'm like, look, we'll figure this out, and when I go to church on Sunday, let me look to find you and we can meet properly and look at our calendars and we'll figure something out. So there was this really cool God wink synchronicity of a blessing that came because she listened to some promptings and my heart was just open. And I'm like, I'm just talking to her and helping her. It's like, you're a lady from church. I can, whatever. If it turned into a business, fine. If not, fine. We're here to help each other, right? We're not here necessarily to get rich off each other. We're just here to help each other in whatever way we can. So that was what was going on for me this week. And just really discerning the difference between being busy and surviving and even making a good living and doing things that actually uplift and serve our soul. Because our souls came in, like I said earlier, with a purpose of some sort. We came in with an intention to do certain things in this lifetime. And if we kind of took a left-hand turn and just forgot about that or got distracted by the shiny object over there, and meanwhile our soul wants us over this way, it's good sometimes to check in and ask ourselves, what am I doing today to make myself better, to be able to share my light, share my love, share my gifts, and create a sense of legacy? There is a real difference between just being busy and being active versus doing things that serve a greater purpose. And I think part of the frustration maybe a lot of younger generations have is they don't have that same sense of duty and purpose and importance and creating a legacy that some of us older people might have. And so it's really important for us as the elders and the older generation to encourage anyone who's younger than us to find out for themselves, what do you think your soul wants you to do in this lifetime? How can you be of service to others? How can you find, develop, and share your spiritual gifts? How can you shine your light so it can be a beacon to help those who are lost, or to light your own footsteps as you're going through a somewhat dark and contentious world at times? So those are the things that I was thinking this week a lot. All right, so we're going to shift gears into the messages from Spirit today. And the first one that I flipped over was the Oracle card of Divine Love. And Divine Love says, open yourself to the spark of light in the core of your heart. Totally accept the complexities of life and the simplicities of creation. Embrace everything and everyone. So, if we're coming from a place of love and we're truly doing things because we care, the angels that are around us, our guides that are around us, the spirits that are around us, truly support and champion and magnify those energies to help us as we're helping others. And we're putting a positive force, a goodness, a love, a kindness out into the world. The next card that I chose, the angel card, was that of creative projects. And creative project says, your soul longs to express itself in creative ways. We're guiding you to infuse artistry and creativity into your life. Creative expression makes you feel alive and excited and reignites passion for and towards your life. So love is there for us if we choose it, right? That divine love is what energizes us as we go forward. Creativity is part of the natural outcome that comes to us when we've opened our heart. We get these creative ideas flooding in. And then the third card that I chose, and I laughed when I flipped it over, was patience, because this is one of my least favorite topics, but it's one of the lessons I've had to learn over time. So it says, patience says, trust that the higher forces of life to know what is best for you. And remember that when you are asked to wait, you are being prepared for something even better than what you might have expected or wanted at that time. So change your attitude to one of acceptance, relax, and take stock of your blessings. Do not rush off on some wild goose chase of your lower will. When the time is right and you are ready and refreshed, the next door will open. Patience will always be rewarded. So, patience, right? In this day and age of immediate gratification and getting frustrated when it takes our laptop computer more than 10 seconds to turn on. I laugh because I think back to the days of, powering up my old IBM big old desktop thing. And, you would flip the switch, turn it on, and go get a cup of coffee, come on back, and maybe it would be starting to come back to life after a couple of minutes, not after 10 seconds. But it's funny once you get used to the faster speeds and all. It's like, wow, it's really easy to be impatient when it's just being normal and you're like in a hurry. Okay, the next couple of cards I chose, I picked 3 cards from the tarot deck, and this is the Aquarian deck. And the 3 cards here are for the immediate past, what's going on now, and what we're setting up for the near future. And so the first card of the recent past is the Charioteer upside down. And the chariot represents this sense of movement, of wanting to go out there into the world, wanting to accomplish things and get things done. And when it's upside down, it says, like, we just feel like we're fumbling and bumbling around and spinning our wheels and not getting anywhere very quickly. The Sun, which is the now card, is saying now is the time not only to shine our light, but it's to learn new things, to really figure out what it is that we want. Because very often, if I, as a life coach, ask people, what do you want? They're like, I don't know. Well, I'm like, then you're sure as heck not going to get it. If you don't know what you want, it would be like going into a restaurant and the waiter is there and he's like, what would you like to eat, sir or ma'am? And you're like, I don't know. Well, he can't put the order into the kitchen to bring you any food, no matter how hungry you are, unless you tell them, this is what I want, right? And as long as it's on the menu, chances are you'll get it. And even sometimes if it's not on the menu, depending on the chef, you might get it anyway. So figuring out what we want right now is a big part of what Spirit is saying it's very important to do, to shine our light, learn what we need to, but be really clear about what it is that we want. And then the near future for us is this card. The 2 of Cups is the lower, the minor arcanas card that talks about like the lovers and connections and deep friendships and seeing eye to eye to people and working with people and being on the same page as people. So what this progression basically said is we went from a place of feeling our wheels are stuck as we crystallize our vision of what we want and who we want to do it with, and are under that influence of the sun, and we learn what we need to do, and we're projecting this positivity out into the world, that will attract to us the people that see the world like we do, that we can play with, be with, love, and interact with as we go forward. And then the last thing I wanted to share is I cracked open my book, Portal to Potential, and I turned to a page randomly, and I got this information about being limitless. And it says, you will be beyond limits once they are not even a consideration in your experience of yourself. Free from the impositions of others, pressing in upon your soul. Similar to the paradox where you cannot be aware of having no thought while you are having no thought, you cannot be limitless while you accept and are aware of the limitations. It is only in hindsight that you can notice the state of being where expansion, oneness, nothingness, and everything existed all at the same time. Like the atmosphere around you, when you are immersed in the moment does not exist in your awareness. It is not that you take it for granted, it simply would not be useful. Trying to understand it while it is happening would actually impede or prevent what is possible. So what I find with this that's really kind of interesting is, I guess the analogy that comes to mind in some ways is you can't be analyzing your life while you're trying to live it. How silly would it be if we were with a romantic partner and instead of just being caught up in the moment and feeling that touch or that kiss or that caress or whatever, right? And just being, enjoying that moment and that intimacy and that connection. Wouldn't it be ridiculous if we were kind of taking mental notes of, oh, I wish you would touch me here or kiss me there or this and that, and oh, that was a good one or that was what? No, that takes us out of the moment, right? It takes us out of the experience. Part of the reason most people love to go to movies and even the big IMAX where it's like, it's right there, is you're immersed into the story. It takes you out of the everyday life. You're not sitting there criticizing the movie like a movie critic, right? While you're there, you're enjoying that movie. You're experiencing that movie. Afterwards, there's plenty of time to be like, yeah, that could have been better, or this could have been better, or I like that, or I hated that. But while you're in it, while you're having any experience in this life, it is so much richer and better to fully embrace that, enjoy it, be part of it, and get out of your head, right? Be present. Enjoy what's happening around you. There'll be time later to kind of analyze it and figure things out. But too often we kind of wreck the moment by pulling out of the moment. And it's like, once you're out of it, it's kind of hard it's like you broke the spell in a way. It's hard to get back in there and really enjoy it. So when I read that the first time, I was like, yeah, I think part of the message there, the moral of the story, if you will, is to really allow yourself to fully experience whatever it is that you're experiencing. If you're enjoying it, ride the wave. If you're not liking it, do what you need to change it. But do it from a place of power within the situation where you can actually affect the changes, and not try to just kind of like take notes or complain or whatever, right? Like be a person of action when you're there. Okay, so those were the messages from Spirit for tonight. And again, and hopefully they gave you a little bit of clarity or comfort or answered some questions for you. And if nothing else, gave you something to ponder as we go forward. All right, so now is the time in the show. I don't see any capitals anywhere. So this is where we would normally go to the chat. And if people had questions, they would put it there. So, okay, so I'm going to just look a little more carefully. I see there's a couple people that actually wrote things in smaller letters. So I'm going to dive in there and see about answering those questions. All right, so the first is from Lucy. And Lucy says, I need your opinion. My friend just had a baby. She wants to name him Gabriel. I told her it's not a good name. They'll call him Gabe Owners. He'll get bullied, right? Well, actually, I personally like the name Gabriel. There's an archangel named Gabriel, and they might call him Gabe for short, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. No, I don't. You know what? When it's interesting, I think that the souls that are coming down inspire parents as to what they want to be named in order to set up the certain vibrations and patterns that they're going to need and have in their lifetime. I hated my name growing up, and my mother was inspired to name me Alethea, and my father was furious. He had nothing to do with my name because he was actually in the Navy at the time when I was born, and they were having a 2-week maneuvers out in the South Seas, and they were under radio silence. So he didn't even know I was born for the first 2 weeks. I was born prematurely. And my mom and dad, back in the 60s when I was born, as was very common back in the day, it's like the firstborn was always going to be a boy. So, they only discussed boys' names. So I was going to be Richard. That's all there was to it. So when my mom had me as a girl, she was like, oh, no, we don't have any girls' names. So she gets the baby book out and looks, didn't get very far, obviously, since my name starts with an A. And so she liked the name because of what it meant. And the meaning in Greek was wholesome and healing and the light and truth of God. And she's like, oh, that's a nice name. And so she named me that. Well, you can imagine as a kid, I didn't meet any other Altheas. In fact, I've never met any other Altheas my whole life. I've heard of a few people that have the name, but I've never met anybody else that has my same name. So I hated it growing up for when I was young. But when I got into the metaphysical and healing field, I thought, and I'm a teacher and a life coach. And I'm like, now I get it. My name suits me for what my soul wanted me to be doing in this lifetime. And so what I would say there is, if their friend is feeling the name Gabriel around that baby, that's probably because that's what that soul wants to be called in this life. So I wouldn't discourage her. I don't think that he would have any difficulties with that. If for some reason he did get bullied, then it is something that his soul was ready to accept, along with whatever lessons came from that. And who knows, it might make him become the next Karate Kid, right? You get bullied and then you go learn martial arts and then you kick butt and take names later. All right. So then I have a question here, and this is from A shares. Okay. And she says, what energies between me and this guy I see on Instagram? We see each other's stories, but I haven't spoken with him. His name is Z. Okay. So when I tune into energies around people, it's always through the filter of the person I'm reading for, right? I know we've talked about this on other shows where it's not spiritually ethical for me to read like a third party, right? So if, for example, I went to somebody to read for me and I asked them, well, how is my ex-husband doing with his new wife? It's none of my flipping business, how they're doing. It has nothing to do with me in this moment, and it's truly none of my business. He's not my husband anymore, right? So so there's a line where we have to kind of say, all right, if you want to know what is the energy that's around you that's coming from that guy, absolutely, that's a fair game. I can tell you that I feel a curiosity, I feel a positivity, I feel sort of an impatience on his end and a caution on your end. And I also feel like that's justified on your end. There's definitely something to be a little cautious about here. I would definitely, take your time with any online stuff these days. Remember, there's so much that people can create through AI, and there's so many people that have gotten hurt through catfishing. And for those of you who don't know, catfishing is where somebody creates a whole profile that has nothing to do with their reality, right? So you might have a 40-year-old pedophile pretending to be an 18-year-old on talking to high school kids and college kids, trying to get them to meet with him at some point in time. And, they're really good at putting out the information. Or somebody is pretending to be the other way, a 60-year-old widowed man, and he's hitting on a 62-year-old widow woman, and turns out to be a scam of somebody who's in their 30s who doesn't even live in the country, that's trying to eventually get money from this older woman by pretending to be this man, right? So catfishing, it's something that's come up in recent years more and more, especially as AIs become more sophisticated, because people can create incredible profiles, lots of pictures, lots of text, lots of history they can pad into these accounts very quickly with the help of AI. So that if you go to look them up or go back and read their Facebook history and read some of their chats and read some of the things they've posted, it's like, wow, this is an amazing person. I had somebody try to catfish me and telling me they were this colonel in the army and they were stationed overseas in Afghanistan at the moment. But, when they got back to town, they wanted to try to look me up and get together and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk on the phone, before we take any next steps. And then the dance started. And I'm like, well, if I understand, if you're out on maneuvers, that's one thing. But, once you're back at base, you can make a phone call, and what's the time difference? And he didn't know what the time difference was between here and Afghanistan. So I'm like, little hints were going off. And I was like, finally, you know what? Have a good life. God bless you. If you do come back to the States when you're done your tour duty, if you still want to look me up, feel free. And of course, I didn't hear anything back from him because I called him on his bluff. I called him on his BS, right? So you have to be careful these days because, when I looked at his profile, man, it looked amazing. It looked good. There was stories. He seemed like a nice guy. He had posts about him and his mom and how much he cared for his mom and stuff that he did, and you're like, oh, what a good man, right? Yeah, but it was all BS, right? So be really careful out there. So like I said here, the energies around you right now, there's a bit of a impatience on his end, curiosity on your end, a little caution on your end. I think that's appropriate right now. Just take your time. And as you can verify, what's the old saying? Trust, but verify. Trust, but verify. Okay. Next question was, okay. Funny Valentine is saying, if there's a lot of certain animals, like too many, is it ethical to unalive them and feed the poor? Okay. So this is, I don't know whether it's ethical. I don't know whether ethics is as much a situation as practicalities, or there's different religious beliefs and whatnot. So, for example, I know that in certain states, the deer population has gotten so large and their food source is scarce that so many of them are starving. The deer were starving to death and suffering terribly. And so because of that, some of the local governments got together and said, okay, so for a certain period of time, we'll issue hunting permits, and people can shoot the deer to help thin the numbers, as long as they were going to be harvesting the meat and, honoring the animal and, using that meat for food. So my thoughts at first were like, oh my God, they're killing Bambi, right? They're killing all these deer. But when I actually talk to people that have seen these poor starving deer out there, and they're like, yeah, there's just so many, the environment won't support them, so we have to thin their numbers. You're like, okay. And part of the understanding here is that if it wasn't for us building the cities and the infrastructures that we have, the natural predators for those deer would be in this area, and there wouldn't be overpopulation. But their natural predators were scared off. You don't see too many bobcats and other types of animals that would go after and kill the deer here in most of our cities, right? We don't have that. As far as the certain animals, I believe, like the American Indians that are, I live in Wisconsin, and I'm not too far from the reservation, and they actually raise buffalo, that then when the time comes, they slaughter the buffalo and they use the hides, they process the meat, they eat the meat, and they honor the soul of that animal. And it's their understanding that the creator provided the buffalo as a food source for them, and they honor the soul of each of those animals for choosing to come down and to serve in that capacity. So I look at that model and I say, okay, if we eat the meat or the fish or the fowl with a respect for how it chose to come down and be part of our food system. The other part is, if you go back into the Old Testament and the Bible, it even says that God put the animals on the earth for Adam and Eve, right? That they would be the stewards of them, but those animals were there for them as a food source. So it kind of goes way back. So really, it's, for most people, I think it's got to be a personal choice. I don't like to judge anybody at all because, have I walked in your shoes? No. I don't know what your background is. I don't know what your attachment is. Here in America, we love our dogs. I love my dog. If somebody was to kill or hurt my dog, I would probably take my weapon out and hurt them back, because it would be like, this is my baby. This is a member of my family. How dare you? Right. But if you go to a place like China, they eat dogs in China. This is what they do. So you need me? Oh, so they, that is part of their culture, and they eat cats, right? So if you walk through a Chinese market, you're going to find, hanging up in the windows, just like in the butcher shops here, you see the chunks of meat hanging, they eat cats and dogs. And I'd be horrified, I'm like, no, how could you do that? You can't eat Fluffy, or, it's like, no, you can't do that. But, that's how their culture is. If you went to India, you're going to see cows walking through the streets. I imagine that people that grow up in India who embrace that religious culture and revere and respect the cows, when they come here and find out that we eat cows and we call them hamburgers and cheeseburgers and steaks, they're probably horrified at the thought that these sacred these animals that are sacred to them are one of the staples of our food source, right? So, it's a tough question there. I think that on a certain level, I know if I had to actually go out and kill the actual animal that I was going to eat, other than catching fish, which I've done, and I don't have much trouble killing a fish. I don't know why. I guess because they're cold-blooded or something. I don't know why. But if I had to kill a chicken, I probably wouldn't. I'd eat the eggs. If I had to kill a cow, I probably would have to give up beef, but I'd still enjoy the cheese and the milk and the dairy that come from that cow. So I just know for myself, I give gratitude and thanks to the animal that gave its life so that I can eat, and I make sure I don't waste any of it. And I have that as my way that I kind of rationalize that. And I look at that. I know for the most part, most health practitioners tell us we need protein. There are a lot of vegans and vegetarians out in the world, and many of them become sickly and suffer because they don't have enough of the things that we get from the fish and the meat and the poultry in our diet. And they have to take tremendous supplements to help restore some health and strength to them. So, but then I've met other vegans and vegetarians that are incredibly healthy because they said they gave up a lot of the meats and the cheeses and the stuff that were creating cholesterol problems for them. So, it's sort of like, look, live and let live in a lot of ways when it comes to people. When it comes to animals, it depends why you're killing them, right? If you're killing them to, like I know in Africa, I believe that even some of the people that were leading the safaris and killing these amazingly beautiful elephants, and when they were asked, why are you doing that? They said there's overpopulation and we need to thin the herds, and we kill it as respectfully and painlessly as we can, right? Clean shot kind of thing. We don't want the animal to suffer. And then we use this meat, we bring it to a local village so the villagers can have meat and eat and survive. So yeah, it's a tough question there, Funny Valentine. I'm not sure that, until you've walked in somebody's shoes, until you have figured out what is the best way to go after, to think about it, if they're suffering and you're easing suffering, does that justify it? If that was the soul's purpose of that animal, that food group, and that soul, that spirit knew that I'm coming down and this is how I live out my purpose by offering myself to feed these hungry people so that they can survive. Okay. I think if you're stealing somebody's dog off the street and killing it to eat it, and you're not living in a culture where, that's a food source, that instead that's somebody's pet, I think you better look out because somebody's going to come after you, and rightfully so, right? Because that's not the culture and that's not the norm. And there was no reason to, take that dog or cat and kill it in this case, right? So I think you have to look at things situationally and try really hard not to judge a different culture, because there are different belief systems around the world. If it's like, if vegetarianism works for you, great. If veganism works for you, great. If you're a meat-loving, keto-loving person, and that's how you feel healthiest and strongest, and you just, are thankful for the food, and you give thanks for that animal who gave up its life before you eat it, okay. I certainly am not going to judge and say one is right, one is wrong. It really depends on the situation. And if you're being consistent within the situation and the culture that's around you and the purpose that's there. So I would say, I would go as far to say dogs that incarnate in China and cats that incarnate in China, probably know on a soul level, chances are I'm going to wind up with somebody's food. But dogs and cats that incarnate here in the States, know that they're going to wind up in somebody's home as a pet and family member. At least that's what I think. Okay, I hope that helped a little bit. Okay, so next question is, ever see the movie Misery? Well, yes, I have actually. It was a pretty frightening show. That was where you had somebody who was a fan of a writer kidnap him and then take him and torture him to keep, well, disabled him, hobbled him to keep him captive so she could have him all to herself. But she had mental problems, So yeah. So I'm not sure what that you'd like to know about that there, Goro, but that's yes, I'd seen that years and years ago. I think that was James Caan that was in that movie. And let me try to remember who was it Kathy Bates? Was that her, one of her first breakout roles? I think that was her back in the day. I like her much better as Matlock now. No, not as scary as an old lady lawyer. All right. Well, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left. Does anybody have, that's on the chat here tonight, does anybody have any other questions or comments or things that they would like me to talk about? If so, please put it in the chat there and I will gladly answer those. Okay. And in the meantime, I think I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of service and how if you feel stuck in your life and if you're feeling overwhelmed, lonely, lost, like you don't get it. You're sort of like, I don't get it. Life is so hard and what's the point and what's going on? I think that if you can give yourself permission to be of service to others, and it can be simple service, go to a soup kitchen, a food pantry. Those types of places are always looking for help. Be a volunteer at a local humane society, animal shelter. Those places are always looking for help. And it doesn't have to be many, many hours a week or many days a week. It can be an hour a month, 2 hours a month, whatever. Just go and be of service to somebody else. It will help reveal to you how loving your heart is. It will help show you where you have peace and joy in your life. And as you help others, it'll help to heal and give a sense of clarity to you and as to where you should go in your own life and what you should do. Sometimes, I'll tell you, I was telling a friend just the other day, I have this sense of the Holy Spirit or a guiding, a guide or angel that works with me that will not let me have a pity party. When challenges happen or bad things happen and I'm like, why? And I just kind of want to whine a little bit or feel bad for myself because I'm a good person. Why am I having to go through these challenges? I feel like Spirit kind of pats me on the head and they're like, okay, you can have this pity party for about 30 seconds and then get over it. Everything that happens to us happens for a reason, for us to learn, for us to grow, to us to have more compassion, to build resilience, to gain tools, to get curiosity so that we can go out and learn other things. And so when Spirit, kind of is like, all right, get out of your own way. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. And if nothing else, compare yourself, if you have to other people that are truly suffering out in the world, right? There are people that go to bed hungry every night. We in the States here, for the most part, have it so easy compared to so many people around the planet, right? We have homes that we can sleep in and beds that we can sleep in. We have a roof over our heads and security around us. We have clothing to wear appropriate to whatever the season is. Most of us have more than one pair of shoes, where some people around the world don't even have any, right? We have food to eat so much that obesity is a problem in our country because we have that much excess of food. We have people to love us. We have pretty much stores that carry anything we could possibly imagine we want, from price ranges from less than $1 all the way up to millions, right? No matter how poor or rich you are in this country, you can find something if you're looking for it, for the most part, right? We have access to healthcare, even if it's not the best one, we have access to it, right? We have people that care, and we have the churches. We're allowed to practice freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And even though our politics right now looks like, holy moly, what has happened, right? As we're looking around and there's so much contention and so much gaslighting and so much like perception spinning on both sides of the spectrum, we have a country where, we don't have a dictator. We're not under martial law. We don't have our government turning off our internet so that we can't communicate with the outside world, right? We have all these freedoms. Now, yeah, there's some horrible things that have happened with natural disasters, with murders, with people power hungry going wild. We've seen it. And those are not nice things at all. They're horrible things. And we still live in one of the greatest countries in the world. And we still have so many blessings that when we are facing our own personal challenges and problems and life feels overwhelming for us as an individual. And right now I'm talking especially to a lot of the younger folks out there in the audience that may have tuned in, maybe by mistake, maybe not. But when you're evaluating your life, take a step back and look at all that other people have gone through around you. Look at what your parents and grandparents went through to provide the things they did for you, right? Nobody's had it easy, or very few people really truly have it easy in their life. And so we don't want it to be easy, because that's partly through the struggle that we figure out who we are and what's important to us and what challenges build those characters. And how do we learn compassion and resilience and perseverance, right? So I think part of the reason, Spirit's like, hey, take a minute, take a reality check, before we start overreacting about how hard we have it. When in this age of enlightenment that we live in, go back and look at the history books, read about the lives of the pioneers, read about the lives of the people in middle-aged Europe. Like your head will spin when you think, like, what? They didn't even have plumbing? They had to go fetch water from a well. Yeah, hello. We take so many things for granted. And I think sometimes the disasters and emergencies and the challenges that pop up into our lives do so to kind of get us to go like, wake up. Look at the blessings in your life. Look at the opportunities. Look how people come to your aid. Look at what's available to help you. There was an old saying, and I guess I don't remember, it's scripture or Proverbs or something, but it's like, God helps those who help themselves, right? Stop praying and waiting for a miracle to happen. You sometimes have to be that miracle. You have to go out there and make the things happen and make the changes. And being of service to others is a wonderful way to get out of your own head and your patterns. And by helping others, you start to feel good about yourself. And that starts a positive cycle of reinforcement instead of a negative cycling of self-pity. All right. Well, that's our show for the night. Thank you very much for those of you who've joined in on us. Once again, this is Spiritual Street Talk with Alethea Jacob. I'm Alethea. I want to give a shout out to Mary and Chris Grizzly, who are our producers and the heart and soul of this whole Bigfoot network. We are very grateful for all the work that they do so that we hosts can be running our shows and sharing our thoughts and our inputs and answering questions and doing readings and basically responding to whatever it is that you guys are asking and hopefully wanting to know more about. And I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And I'm going to remind you to shine your light and share your love and your gifts. Be kind to others. Be kind to yourself. Be unconditionally loving and forgiving of yourself and others. And do the best you can to be the best possible version of you that you can be out there. Create a legacy of leaving a positive impact on the lives of everybody that you touch. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you'll join me again next week. Once again, this is Alethea, and you've been watching Spiritual Street Talk with Alethea Jacob. Bless you. Have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you soon. And please do all those really nice social media things. Ring the bell, subscribe, share, follow, tell others about us. We'd love to have you. Thanks. Bye now.